Hello everybody and welcome to Nathan on Shuffle and to my latest episode here. This is an exciting one. I've seen a lot of my fellow YouTubers do this. It's kind of a staple of prog YouTube, I would say. So I've got to give you guys my favorite albums of the year so far. This is the halfway point. We've got 6 months under our belt at this point of the year. So obviously you have to check in and see what albums have impressed you so far to this point in the halfway point of the year. So a great check-in, a great opportunity to kind of get some recommendations of albums you may have missed. All of these, I believe, I've reviewed on the channel, so you can go to the respective reviews. I will try to link the full reviews in the description, so it's a little bit of a catch-all of all of the albums that I've talked about on the channel and kind of giving you a rundown of why I really love them and why they're on my list. I'm not doing this in a ranked order. I'm just doing it in an alphabetical order by artist because I like to wait to actually rank everything towards the end of the year. So everything's still in flux and I don't want to give away what I'm thinking about in terms of ranking these albums. But you know, these are all excellent albums that I absolutely adore and heartily recommend. I think these are all worthy of the title of Best of the Year so far. So let's get into it. Some incredible records ahead. All right, so first on my list, I have Aust and their album Waving at the Sky. Fantastic prog metal. This is one of the heavier albums on my list. There aren't a ton of prog metal albums that have really been striking me so far this year. I've been much more into kind of your standard prog rock, but this is one that really sticks out to me. This is their second record. Definitely has influences from Porcupine Tree, Steven Wilson solo stuff, as well as like an Opeth style. Very dark, very dark subject matter on this record. And the music really fits that feel. There's some growlings peppered throughout. I'm not a big fan of harsher vocals, but they're there in limited doses, so it doesn't really bother me on this record at all. It just brings the emotion and pain of the main protagonist, which I think works really well. So it's just an incredible record. I've really loved it. I think it's on par with their first record, maybe even a slight bit better. And it's fun to see them trying to strike out a bit more on their own when their first record was really tied to their influences. This one still is as well, but I think they're also throwing in their own stylistic feel, and it's just a fantastic record, well worth checking out, one of the star records of the prog metal genre for me. Next, probably one of the least proggy records, I'll admit, on my list, but I absolutely adore Forever How Long by Black Country New Road. I like this new direction. Some people like their previous two records where they had a very prominent frontman who had this kind of unusual but very eclectic style of vocal, but he left the group and the three female leads kind of took control here. And I think they're all fantastic. They contribute to the writing here and they have different vocals throughout the record, and I just really love this kind of bright pop aesthetic to a lot of these tracks, but there's still unique instrumentation. It's indie rock, post rock, but done at its finest level, and I just really like the aesthetic of this record. Besties, that starts the record, is one of my favorite tracks of the year, and I just think this is fire. I just really enjoy this record and find a lot to enjoy. It's not everyone's taste, I understand. And like I said, it's not really purely in the progressive rock world, but I just adore it anyway, so it's got to be in my top 20 for the year so far. This has been a record that surprised me. This is Brass Camel and their record Camel. It starts and ends with two fabulous near epic tracks of really great prog variety. The first track really reminds me of like classic 70s Rush, where the final track reminds me of classic 70s Queen, but done in a much more expanded, extended proggy style. The middle tracks are just great funk rock jams that I just enjoy with enough little prog flourishes to keep my entertainment and interest. And it's just a fun group of just really cool individuals who kind of toe that line between kind of the 70s funk rock and progressive rock. And I just absolutely adore this record. It's fun, it's vibrant, it's exciting, and one of my favorites for sure of the year. Next, of course, we've got the Neil Morse pick. I always have to include something from the man Neil Morse. He's so prolific, and his latest project is Cosmic Cathedral. which brings on Chester Thompson and Byron House, and of course Phil Keaggy on board. Kind of an older, more mature sound to it because of the older age of the musicians here, but a little bit of a jazz fusion, almost a yacht rock kind of flavor to this as well, but it's still vintage Neil Morse with all of his classic styles that you'd come to expect. Some big meaty epics, some really cool prog rock stylings done in his typical fashion, some epic build-ups, some really emotional payoffs, and it just makes for an incredible record. It starts off with a mini epic called The Heart of Life, which starts it right on the right foot. Incredible shorter epic, kind of along the lines of Lifeline. And there's the big epic Deepwater Suite, which takes up a lot of room on the second half of the record. So fantastic. I love everything about this record, and I love Neil Morse kind of experimenting and playing with different configurations of musicians. It's providing so much great work, and The Resonance was incredible last year, and this is right on par with it. Really love this record. It's one of my favorites, certainly. Shards by Dim Gray. This is a fantastic record as well. Maybe a bit under the radar, but I love this work. It has more of that kind of poppier feel to it, maybe not full-on progginess. It kind of fulfills a similar space that Mir had last year, which was my favorite record of the last year, where they have a very strong pop sensibility, but they're able to infuse some expansive prog sensibility to it to make for a really vibrant, interesting listen. It's just beautiful soundscapes, wonderful vocals. I love the final track, which is a 10-minute powerhouse. Just wonderful sounds, just wonderful melodies, and this grows on me every time I listen to it. It's really beautiful, and if you like that more laid-back kind of pop-infused prog music, this is definitely going to be for you. I absolutely love it, and one of my favorites. Blazing Revelations by Dominic Sanderson really came out of nowhere and surprised me. I heard his record that he put out previously, but I feel like this one is even more eclectic and more mired in classic prog rock. There's definite undertones of Van der Graaf Generator, a bit of King Crimson, but a unique artist who has a unique voice. Yeah, you could argue that maybe he leans a little too hard into the Van der Graaf wheelhouse. You know, his voice sounds ominously close to Peter Hamel, but I think there's enough variety throughout the record to kind of offset some of the clear homages to Van der Graaf Generator. 4 tracks, 3 of them are pretty lengthy, and they go through so many different things. It's very eclectic, very challenging, but definitely rewarding. I feel like the production here is a little bit less polished, a little bit more raw, which sometimes isn't my favorite way to do things, but I think it really leans into kind of this classic prog feel, even in the production style, and it has a bit of a charm because it's a little bit less polished and more just spontaneous from the artist. I think there's a lot of creativity here and a record that I really enjoy. I think it's really interesting and well worth any classic prog fan's attention. Next, I have to have Dream Theater's Parasomnia on my list. And I know a lot of people expressed maybe some disappointment in this record. I think in some prog circles it's not cool to like Dream Theater anymore, perhaps. But I thought this was an excellent return to form. You bring back Mike Portnoy into the equation, and it's kind of a near concept record that just works for me on every level. I love the concept and how everything is tied together by this theme of dreams and sleep and the kind of darkness that can come in those different kind of sleep disorders and conditions. There's a great epic towards the end. Bend the Clock is one of my favorite tracks of the year. Just a beautiful ballad that has a cool kind of Rush sensibility and an excellent guitar solo from Petrucci. It's just a fun record and showcases a lot of vibrancy from the band. You could tell they were excited to play this material, and Mike Portnoy's drums just really shine throughout the record. So to me, a triumph of everything they were looking to achieve, and one of my clear favorites of the year. I think this is an excellent record in my top half of favorite Dream Theater records. I just think it's a triumph of what the band can accomplish. A great prog metal record this year. Time Silent Radio, and this comes in 2 parts. There's Time Silent Radio 2 and Time Silent Radio 7. I consider them like the same album. It's a double album where one disc is Time Silent Radio 2 and one disc is Time Silent Radio 7. Great return by one of my favorite American prog bands, Echoland. Time Silent Radio 2 has the two big epics, which are both fantastic, go through so many different things throughout their runtime, never remain boring, always have something exciting and are constantly morphing and changing. And Time Silent Radio 7 has excellent shorter tracks that bring a more melodic, hookier sensibility. And I think a lot of people are sleeping on that record because most people focus on the epics as the big prog fans. But Time Silent Radio 7 is absolutely amazing. Every track is just super well done, supremely polished, just the best of what the band has accomplished. And I think it's a triumphant return from them. They've been away from making music for a while. So I was really excited for this music, and I think it lives up to all the hype. Excellent records, some of the best prog of the year by my estimation. Then we've got kind of my sleeper hit of the year. This is Edensong and their album Our Road to Dust. I feel like it's not being talked about nearly as much as it should be, but this is a fantastic record which blends this classic prog aesthetic, kind of this Jethro Tull sort of feel with flute work and a folky vibe, but brings a modern edge, brings this kind of prog metal sensibility. It has a bit of touchstones of like a Dream Theater, and it's just a fantastic blend and excellent playing and musicianship, excellent vocals, some experimental sections. I love Black Crow, which is like a weird pop diversion from all of these bigger, expanded, proggier pieces that just works fantastically well. There's some catchy moments, there's some great instrumentals, and it all comes back around with a very anthemic ending in the title track. I just think it's the perfect album, and it's just really blown me away. I think this is one of the premier albums of the year, and hopefully it continues to get more and more attention because it really deserves that kind of praise. So one of my favorites for sure. I think this is just such a solid record. The Flower Kings and their new record, Love. I've been on record to say some of the albums of their newer iterations since, Waiting for Miracles forward haven't been my favorite in terms of their sprawling discography. I think it's hard to compare because they have so many records and so much material at this point, and there's those early records that just really captivated me and were some of my seminal records that really brought me into the prog genre. Things like Stardust We Are and Space Revolver, even Flower Power, just incredible life-changing records for me. So it's hard to put this on the same level as those records, but boy, this is a great record. This is one of the best of the modern era of the band. Yeah, it's maybe a bit more mellow and laid back in a lot of spots. There's a lot of more ballady type tracks, but the first track, We Claim the Moon, starts things on a very vibrant front, just really upbeat and great classic Flower King style vibe and vibrant soundscapes. The Elder is a great expanded track that is just beautiful to behold and so many sumptuous melodies and beauty, and it just continues from there, never letting up, always having something to say, very beautiful melodies all throughout, and really I think it's one of their best modern day works and a definite step up from their last album, which disappointed me a little bit. So I really love this record. I think it deserves to be spoken of highly, and to think that Roine Stolt is still making this caliber of music this far into his career is really remarkable. So I absolutely adore this record. I think it's a fantastic work and a great addition to their catalog. Next I have IQ's Dominion, which I feel similarly about. This is far into IQ's career and they're still making absolutely incredible music. I feel like this is a step up from their previous album, The Resistance, which disappointed me slightly. I still think it's a great record, but it just felt like a little bit of a step down from The Road of Bones, but this one kind of rights the ship a bit. I think it helps that it's a bit of a shorter record. It's a bit more, direct and doesn't have all these sprawling sections that lose you. I love the epic, The Unknown Door, and all of the shorter tracks are just really interesting and intricate. I love their balance of like classic neo-prog, but they bring a bit of a modern edge to it with some heavier parts and sections, some really cool expanded instrumentals, and the vocals are incredible. I would nitpick that, like, I wish there was some more memorable hooks throughout the record. Not a lot of things like are earworms that I remember well after listening to the record, but every experience I have with the record while listening is absolutely awesome. So I think this is a great addition to their catalog and a premier record from the band. So definitely high marks for an incredible return by one of the classic neo-prog bands, certainly, showing everybody how it's done. Next, one of the most surprising debut records of the year. This is The Passing by Jacob Roberge. A beautiful record. Obviously, I'm going to be a huge fan because it has a lot of the same sensibility as Neil Morse. You know, just beautiful melodic tracks, but with cool proggy undertones, some cool, interesting instrumental diversions, heartfelt vocals. I just adore this record with my full heart. Especially as a debut, this is like one of the most impressive records I've heard in years. The final track, The Passing, the title track, amazing. It goes through so many different things in its runtime. It feels like he threw everything but the kitchen sink into this, and it just works. It's cohesive, has a bit of a Haken kind of and Dream Theater vibe, so he dabbles into the prog metal vein. But every track before it is really fascinating as well. Just beautiful melodic tracks that bring some great hooks that are just really pleasing to listen to, that just really work their way into my heart as some of my favorite music of all time. So I just absolutely love this record. It's a must listen for anyone who likes the same music as me, who's a Neil Morse fanatic, who likes kind of the more melodic side of symphonic prog. This is just a must own, must listen album. I just absolutely love it. Fantastic. Next, another album that really surprised me that has risen up in my ranks. This is Joviaak and their record Autofiction Part 1, Shards. And this is a cool blend of music. You know, they have that kind of modern prog metal side to them, kind of a Haken-esque style, but I feel like they blend it with this really interesting sort of 80s arena rock, you know, style vibe, like a Toto or Journey or, you know, one of those type of bands. So it brings a lot of fun, melodic, poppy hooks into their equation. There's some instrumental tracks here. There's some moments that are a bit leaning on the heavier end of the spectrum. There's some stuff that reminds me of like pomp rock, like Queen. It just runs the gamut, but always stays catchy, always stays fun, has plenty of earworms and hooks, and it's just really grabbed me as one of the most fun albums to listen to this whole year. So absolutely love this record. I think it's one of the highlights of the year, clearly. Car Mechanic, Transmutation. Another excellent record by a band that's been around the block for quite some time. It's been a long time since the previous Car Mechanic record, but Jonas Reingold has been busy with the Steve Hackett Band, but finally was able to work on a record here, and he brings a whole host of like classic musicians here. These are all like the stars of modern progressive rock all coming together in this big like We Are the World of Prog style. And it just makes for a really impactful record with so much great musicianship. You get John Mitchell on vocals, which I know was a little bit controversial because people love the prior vocalists. But John Mitchell brings a star power to this that I really enjoy. I think his voice really works with the material. There's a big classic epic at the end that I really love. All the shorter tracks are really fun. And it's just great symphonic prog at its finest. This is what I come to prog music for. This is like right in my wheelhouse and right in my lane, and it's perfectly produced. It sounds pristine, and I just absolutely loved every turn of this record. I think it's really fantastic. Great players, great melodies, great tracks, and it just works. Fantastic. Jonas Reingold hit out of the park. Lars Fredrik Frösli's album, Gley Meister. Fantastic. You know, this is the Wobbler keyboardist doing his solo material, and as much as I wish we had a new Wobbler record, this is a great placeholder for now because it showcases the same kind of classic prog sensibility, some really cool vintage keyboards throughout the record. The only possible negative I could say is the vocals are not all that impressive. I think Lars kind of takes on the vocals himself, but they're not bad. They're just, you know, not really the showcase and highlight to the record compared to the musicianship and the stunning keyboard work. But there's some great expanded pieces, very colorful, very memorable. Some really great hooks in these musical vignettes here. I love the title track and its repeating melody, and it always comes back around in a more expansive and beautiful, majestic way. And I think he just has a wonderful quality of being able to really bring these tracks home and showcase something really excellent. So this is one of my favorites of the year, certainly. I really love this record. I think it's prog at its finest. Another one on the more surprising scale, this is Lux Terminus and the album Cinder. This is mostly an instrumental record. Of course, there's a track with vocals called Catalyst that features Ross Jennings. But it's really interesting because it's prog metal, very modern sounding, but doesn't focus on guitars at all. It's more about the keyboards being the star of the show here. And I really like that angle. It makes it feel unique and different. You know, it definitely has kind of a Liquid Tension Experiment kind of feel to it, but done with a bigger focus on keyboards and more kind of grand sweeping orchestral feels. The Jupiter suite that opens the record is really beautiful and kind of a surprising way to open the record. It's more of this kind of orchestrated, cinematic kind of soundscape rather than this like fireworks, virtuosic, what you'd expect from modern prog metal. And I really like that choice. I think it's a great way to open the record and one of my favorite pieces of music, that whole Jupiter suite. But then it continues from there to have a lot of cool modern prog metal sensibilities, some virtuosic playing. I love Catalyst. I think it's one of the best tracks of the record as well, that features a couple different vocalists and some really great playing. Just a beautiful, bright record. And I also like that it's prog metal but not dark and foreboding and melancholy. It's more bright and more positive and uplifting throughout most of the track listing, and I really like that aesthetic. Really beautiful record. Underrated, one of my favorites. Magic Pie have knocked it out of the park with their new record, Maestro. I think this is one of the best records in their catalog. It starts off with probably their best epic, in my estimation, Opus Imperfectus, which concludes in the final track, but in the middle there's fantastic songs as well that showcase a harder rock angle to their sound. Some ballad-esque bluesy numbers. They run the gamut, but they always have their unique style and feel. This is an incredible band from Norway who showcase just such a cool hard rock aesthetic with prog elements. Kind of think of a Uriah Heep or a Deep Purple, but with a bigger penchant for prog rock. I saw them on Cruise to the Edge, and they were fantastic there as well. Just one of the premier prog bands that deserves a lot more praise and attention for just a fun brand of progressive rock that's quirky, that's fun and unique, and I just love their style. Just fantastic work all around. Great record. This Dark Earth by Moonletters. I love Moonletters. This is, to me, their best record. They're a quirky prog band from Seattle, and I just really like their eclectic sensibilities. Just everything here has its own unique sound. It doesn't really sound like any other classic modern band. I think they have some nods to like a Gentle Giant type feel. Definitely some nods to like classic Trick of the Tail era Genesis as well. They have a cool epic to end the record with, but there's a furious energy to all the playing here. They never let up. It's really entertaining. And I just really enjoy this style. It's another band that's more independent, so a bit more raw in their sound and production, but I really appreciate what they're doing musically because it's very entertaining, very eclectic. It's never boring. It always has something that's captivating and catching your attention. And it's just a vibrant, exciting prog rock record that I think a lot of fans of classic prog rock can love. But it has its unique stamp. It doesn't just feel like a pastiche of what's come before. They definitely infuse their own personality and do so in a better way than a lot of their other contemporaries. So just a fabulous record. Solstice, their album Clan, is just a beautiful record. They have just wonderful, sumptuous melodies, have this symphonic prog undertone, female vocals that are heavenly and beautiful, have a bit of a jazzy, funky vibe at times as well, that adds another dimension to their sound. But it's just a really captivating, beautiful record with some really expanded pieces. Twin Peaks just has so much beauty and majesty. It has two sections that ramp up and bring this kind of epic heights to their symphonic sound, but there's a lot of fun diversions, a lot of cool, funky parts to their makes, and some really cool hooks and pop sensibilities. So it runs the gamut between a lot of different cool styles, but I just really like their aesthetic. This is kind of the third in a trilogy of records in this style vein, and I'm just a sucker for it. I think it's fantastic. Great players, great female vocals, and a great blend of sounds. There's some great violin work and just some beautiful soundscapes that I just think are some of the most beautifully captured this year. And then last but not least, we have Steven Wilson's The Overview, another album that I think is criminally underrated. I think people dismiss Steven Wilson nowadays just because he went in a little bit of a poppier direction with a couple records after releasing these two powerhouse records that everyone says are his greatest works. And they're in fact incredible. The Raven, Hand Cannot Erase are untouchable masterpieces of modern prog rock. I agree. But you're dismissing some incredible music he's made along the way past those records if you're dismissing all of his post-Hand Cannot Erase material. And this one even harkens back to kind of his classic prog sound with two big epics that are expansive, that explore space and the universe and these grand conceptual themes. I think this is one of his best works in years. And I don't understand why everyone's not like praising this to the high heavens, because to my ears, it's just beautiful progressive rock done at its finest level. Some wonderful experimental sounds, but still stays true to him as an artist. It feels like it has a lot in line with classic Porcupine Tree material, some proggy moments and instrumental powerhouse sections that harken back to like the Raven era. And maybe a little bit of a modern touchstone of some of his modern electronica kind of stuff that he works with. But it all is just fused fantastically well in this really great cinematic experience that I just thought was absolutely a thrill ride and one of the best records and experiences musically that I've had this year. So I know that's probably over the top praise for a record that most people think is fine at best, but I think it deserves its flowers by someone. So I'm going to be that champion for what I think is one of the best prog releases, of the year for sure. So that's what I have for you guys. So yeah, my top 20 of the year in alphabetical order. Maybe you could tell by the way I talked about some of those, like which ones stand out in my mind, but it's hard to rank them because every album here is definitely worth your time and attention and do have a challenge to being in the top spot by the end of the year. So stay tuned. Hopefully there'll be other records that I can add to my list and make for a really exciting final few episodes of what my favorite albums of the whole year are. So thank you guys for joining me. Hopefully you appreciated this episode, and I'll hopefully catch you guys in a future episode. Let me know in the comments your favorite records of this year, if you agree or disagree with any of my picks. Thank you guys for joining me, and I'll catch you in a future episode. Bye, everybody.